Yantis and Angelo Live. We're here at the political desk again on a Friday afternoon. And the reason we're here is we're heading into the last weekend of campaigning for the March 1st primary. Early voting begins Monday. That means one segment of the campaign is over, and we get to turn it over to voters starting Monday. With me this afternoon is Joe Hyde. Joe, of course, is a candidate for Tom Green County Judge, and we talked to you months ago, seems like months ago. And
Years ago.
Years ago. The campaign can be grueling, it can be tough. What have you learned between then and now?
I've learned that it's a lot of work, but the biggest thing is when you step down from what you're doing, where you had a lot of influence, and all of a sudden nobody wants to talk to you. They think you have cancer or something. They want to put you in hospice. But, it's been, and I've never done this before. So it's like walking, It's like jumping off a cliff and you never hit the ground.
It is, and you can't. There's no way to explain it to someone who's never actually run a campaign from start to finish, run for public office. It's an unusually rewarding and frustrating and amazing experience.
Well, that's true. I admit that for the many years I've interviewed, I've covered these forums as a reporter. And I sit there and I just want to shout at them and say, answer the dang question right, And so I said, well, if I've been watching this for so long, I could do it right. But you know what? When you're up there on the stage and you got your competitors staring at your behind when you're trying to make those remarks and stuff, it gets hard. And to be honest with you, people say, well, you're obviously not nervous up there. I am scared. I am scared when I'm up there. And sometimes, when you're scared, you shout in the microphone or you do something wrong, and all the people that are behind you go, so you did this wrong. And you're like, oh man, I'm going to lose this election over that. And, you make small mistakes, and the key is to make as little mistakes as you can as you cruise along. The other thing is, you don't know how people perceive you.
Right.
And your friends are your enemies, and your enemies are your friends, and you don't know who's real yet. I used to say it's like selling advertising, but none of the deals are honest. That's what it's like. But it's okay. I think I have figured out how to determine if they're really, supporting me and really not. That took me about, 6 weeks to figure that out. And then from there, it's just been hard work. I mean, just going out there and walking. I mean, we've knocked on 2,500 doors, which is not enough, I don't think. I wish I could knock on all the doors.
Yeah.
But how do you knock on all the doors?
It's tough. It's tough. We've had a number of forums. We've been blessed this political cycle to have an unusual number of forums, and I think part of that is because we have a competitive race for county judge where we have no incumbent. Steve Floyd's not running for re-election, but we also have the county commissioner precinct 4 race that has 6 people in it. That's drawn a lot of attention, and we have a competitive justice of the peace race over in precinct 3 with those 3 candidates. Also for county court at law judge number 2. So we've got a number of highly competitive races that people are interested in, and that's lots of candidates. And we started the process again back at those early debates, and it looks like, from my perspective, that the questions are getting better or got better throughout the process, and the candidates got better. What have you seen?
Well, there's a bias in these forums to not really have a lot of substance to the discussion between the candidates about issues. I mean, I sat through 3 forums and listened to the only way we can cut taxes is if I'm the person who can attract this gigantic corporation to come here because I'll give them a bunch of money, and then once they're here, then we can lower your taxes. I was listening to that time and time again. And the other thing is from a candidate perspective, how do you refute that? Because they don't really give you a chance to discuss it.
Right.
And sometimes the forum is, the forum is pretty much biased toward that view, and so they're not going to ask you any questions that will bring it out. So that was difficult for me because sometimes I just want to turn around and say that's not right. And actually, I did do that at the HBA forum. I just had enough. I said, I thought you guys were Republicans. This is crony capitalism.
Yeah.
And the wide ranging discussion about tax breaks. How do you get that forward? You just got to lead everything. I mean, it's kind of like I learned this from watching George W. Bush's campaign. We ran for governor back in the early '90s against Ann Richards. He had like 4 points. And every question he would come back to those things. So what I did in these forums, I kept coming back to, we can give you a tax break every year. We can lower your tax rates every year. And then no one ever asked me, well, how are you going to do that, Joe? And so I came back and I say, well, if they ever asked me, I'd say the sales taxes are way up. The sales tax revenue is way up. We have a county that's flush with cash because we have really good management of it right now. I mean, they've done a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of the COVID, when you start dumping free money into the county coffers, they were able to use, they got $26 million, I think, in COVID money and the ARPA money. They used every dime they could down to about $11.5 million to see where we can reduce portions of the budget and not spend that much money. And then, of course, your property valuations. I mean, I looked at I remember when Judge Floyd was running for judge the first time. When you remember Mike Brown appointed him judge, and then he ran for judge against I can't remember
Richard Easingwood.
Richard Easingwood.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Alzheimer's is another thing that happens during the campaign. You can't remember names. But Richard Easingwood, I remember they were having a debate. But at that time, I think that the total tax base for aggregate value of the property in Montgomery County is something like $4 billion. Well, today it's $7.5 billion. It's almost double.
Yep.
Right. So I realize you have salary increases and stuff like that. You have to, but that's a lot of money that's coming in, and I see it. I think it's accelerating, and it really came home to me at I watched the county budget process, which is kind of boring, but the more exciting one to watch this year was the city, because the mayor Brenda Gunner gets out there and I think the citizens deserve a tax rate decrease.
Okay.
She said that. I mean, it was very bold, and the entire council turned against her. And so next thing you know, she's going along with it. And I was thinking that it just hit me in my brain right there. I said, that right there is where we need to go. We need to get more public officials saying, let's start thinking about giving these taxpayers, you and me, property owners, and particularly like like Trammell and the guys that are younger than are living in rental houses. They need a break. We can't continuously put all this pressure on landlords and expect them to keep our rents low. Right. And there's things that, I mean, I listened to him. We gave Matt Trammell a raise just so he could afford to live somewhere that was nice, and those kinds of things really impacted me, but particularly when the mayor said the citizens deserve a tax rate decrease, and then everyone went against her. Everyone went against her, and they kept it the same. And let me tell you how much revenue they had. They had enough revenue to give the city across the board 5% pay increase. They had a slush fund they gave the city manager to spend however he wants. They called it for roads, but we haven't heard anything about roads, have we? Although I'll just rhetorically say, what about Bell Street? But I know it's getting fixed. But that's what I was thinking. And one more thing, Ronald Reagan used to say, the best way to cut big government is to starve it of the resources to feed it, which is the taxpayer. And so if we have a bias toward lowering the tax rate every year, we can control the size of government. And I'm going to tell you right now, the county, not because they're being bad people or anything, but the county has built a larger bureaucracy than it had 4 years ago. You can't deny that.
That's true.
So it's time to trim that in, rein that in a little bit, and also put the taxpayer in the seat, in the driver's seat, with that type of promise. And the only way you're going to get that promise is if you elect me.
Okay.
And if I have that promise that I am representing you at every budget session, and when some people come and they say, I need this, I need this, I need this, I can say, we can do this, we can maybe not do that much because I still have a promise to the taxpayer. Every year we have that promise.
Right. And we were talking earlier, and the campaign is, it doesn't take you long to find out that politics is actually a contact sport. You take hits and you hit back. And at one particular forum, there was an incident that made the news because there was a flyer placed illegally that disparaged you. And so let's go through that process. What were you thinking when they stopped that debate and said, "We've got an issue"?
Well, when you're up there on the stage, and I've talked to the other candidates too. I've talked to Tommy Ussery about this, and it's like you don't really listen that closely to what I mean. There's so many people talking, and they're kind of saying the same thing, forum after forum after forum. What I'm doing, I'm sitting there trying to creatively think something to say that's interesting, and I'm trying to think of how to craft that response, and that's kind of what you're concentrating on. So I'm kind of concentrating. I'm not really daydreaming, but I'm concentrating on what I'm going to say about the question. And next thing you know, the forum stops. Oh, hold on. We got to stop the forum. And these two ladies get up there and they start talking about this flyer that's placed on all the tables. And I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. What was that? And then they say it was about a candidate. And I'm like, it couldn't be about Ron Perry, I'm just kidding. So I asked, well, what candidate? And then Kelly Duncan turned around and looked at me and she goes, it's about you, Joe.
Yep.
And it was ominous words. I'm like, what did they say about me? And I'm like, what is it? Did they say my mother is not going to endorse me or something? I mean, did they say my mother hates me? I mean, so for 30 minutes after that incident, they made their little thing. First of all, they brought attention to it. So everyone's picking it up on the table and reading it.
Right.
And I'm like, what are they reading about me?
Yeah, don't look at that. And that's the first thing you do.
Yeah,
is
don't
look at that.
it. And they're all like, hey, where is it? Where is it? So everyone's been, their attention's been called to it. It was kind of funny. But what was on the flyer? I didn't know anything what was on this flyer. I had no idea where it came from. I was immediately blaming all three of my guys to my right of me. So I was not really getting angry. I was just like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And so for 30 minutes, I had no idea what it was. And then after the forum, nobody wanted to talk to me. And I'm thinking, what the heck was it? It took me like 5 minutes for someone to find. They didn't want to give it to me because they thought it would upset me or something.
Right.
And so finally, I get a copy of it, and I read it, and it was like. I don't know I'll tell you what it was. Remember, everyone on San Angelo Live complains about the headlines, right?
Right. Yep.
So the Dallas Morning News can go out and make headlines a heck of a lot more racier than we are, and they get awards for it. But we make a little bit of we've poked the bear a little bit with the headlines, and we get clobbered.
Yeah.
And so we were getting clobbered, and we were in one of our morning meetings, which, by the way, our morning meetings are very calm and collected, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Very calm.
They are calm.
Yes, and they're fun.
Yep.
And we enjoy working together. And so because of that, we have this creative juice going at San Angelo Live. And I don't know who said it. And he goes, so why don't we have boring headline day?
Right.
Right. And so boring headline days was instead of putting racy headlines, and they're not racy, they're just kind of, headlines, that draw attention. Because I'll tell you the reason why. Our scarcity today is not paper, and it's not book space at Barnes & Noble. The scarcity today is your mind share. Because we're hit from every direction with information. So you have to burn through to attract that mind share. And then hopefully, when we do, your curiosity is satisfied with the article.
Right.
So instead of having exciting headlines, we decided to have boring headlines.
Yep.
Like instead of 16 sex offenders arrested overnight, we said, a couple of guys who did something really wrong were arrested.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so and this thing went crazy, and people on Facebook were having fun with it. It was fun for everyone.
And we had fun with it.
Yeah. So he puts my thing about the boring headline days, and of course the reason why we did it was because what we call people that complain about boring headlines, they're snowflakes. All right. This bottom line, they're snowflakes, because there's nothing wrong with being a little exciting with your headlines, and so it was the snowflake flyer.
Yes,
right.
The snowflake controversy.
He quotes me, that missive I put in. I think it was December 2019, and then underneath it, he puts like the biography of William Randolph Hearst, and I'm like, dude, that guy was a rich dude. That's almost a compliment. Not really, because I'm never a yellow journalist. I've always been a good one. And that's right. I've always been a good one. By the way, I'll take questions on this thing. If anyone's asking questions, I don't even know if we were monitoring it. But anyway, when I read it, I was like, how lame. There's so many things you could say terrible about me, but not this, not boring headline day. And then we found out it was a renowned cattle rustler, which, by the way, he's reached out to me and he said he's going to vote for me.
Okay.
So maybe it's a good thing. I don't know.
Maybe so. There are other issues that are near and dear to your heart. One of the things that you've mentioned at every turn is broadband internet and the expansion of broadband internet. Well,
I have, and the governor calls back an emergency session, and one of the things that they want to pass legislation on was broadband internet for rural areas. Well, what is Tom Green County? It is a rural area that needs broadband internet. Now, a lot of people that live in the city they have Suddenlink or they've just got Frontier and they see all this fiber rolling out and they think, oh, we're good. We don't need it.
Right.
What they don't understand is in business applications and also in the poor areas of Tom Green County, we don't have adequate internet. And I think these forums highlighted that because, like, for example, we went to Christoval.
Yes.
Could we live stream anything from Christoval? No.
Nope.
And then, well, okay, the next time we went to, where was it, the Riverview? We couldn't live stream from the Riverview.
Yep.
Riverview Restaurant, right there on Avenue D in the middle of Santa Rita, where all the rich people live. We can't live stream anything because the internet's not adequate. And then the Fort Concho Stables we couldn't live stream from, and then also the VFW Hall. That's a pretty good representation of parts of town where broadband internet is inadequate. And it's not that we don't have good people that are working on it, things like that. Is that we need to get a big cash infusion and build the best, finest broadband internet network in the state. It's an economic, all my candidates are saying that their wheelhouse is economic development, and they keep talking about these pie in the sky things like, I'm going to get some large corporation by giving them millions of your tax dollars to move here, and that's going to solve our revenue problems, and then I can give you a tax break. So they're predicating a tax rate cut on them having some kind of fanciful landing of a big company that they're going to give tax abatements to get here anyway. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. But what does make sense is if the governor is calling an emergency session of the legislature to pass legislation to get $100 million to dole out to 254 counties, and it's probably the rural counties that get the majority of the money, to strengthen their broadband internet networks. That's something the county judges have to be very, very keen on. And, I have a lot of experience with it. So, I just kind of jumped on it and tried to, I guess, open the discussion. But in these forums, you get ridiculed for doing that.
Right.
And no one wants to talk about that. They rather say, they rather talk about where they went to high school, but that doesn't impact the students. But not the students, impact the voters. Manny's walking around here interrupting me.
Oh, no, that's fine. You've talked about broadband internet consistently, and our Congressman August Pfluger was in town yesterday, and we had an extended interview, and he mentioned broadband internet as well. We're going to see what he had to say right now, and we'll be right back.
Where's that money being spent? Is it actually working to go that last mile? You'll hear that term, the last mile, to connect our rural communities to the broadband and the needs. Because whether you're a farmer, a rancher, or just living in a rural area or have children who are going to school, I view this maybe a little bit differently than some. Look at what China has done in the cyber domain. They have made a lot of gains, and all of their country is now achieving access to this high-speed broadband and the ability, to participate in this. So this is a national security issue.
We need to be able to participate
Yes.
and compete globally with China.
That's right.
And there it is. August Pfluger just said that broadband internet access in rural parts of Texas and across the United States to compete with China and other countries is a national security issue. So there's your issue, Joe.
Well, you saw during COVID the problem we have with broadband internet. When the school district shut down and they decided they're going to do remote learning, they parked 27 buses all over San Angelo that was broadcasting Wi-Fi just so kids who were poor or didn't have the means to have broadband internet, or maybe their parents just had cell phones, they didn't have hotspots or what have you, just so they could access their classwork. If we have to park 27 buses all over town just to provide broadband internet, that's crazy. And it wasn't really good broadband internet. The state defined, or the FCC is defined as like 25 megabytes down, 3 megabytes up. I want to say we need more than 100 down and more than 10 up. And realize that on broadband internet, it's more than just watching Netflix, although Netflix is probably about 40% of all internet traffic. The streaming is. Maybe it's 50% now because Yellowstone's very popular, right?
Yeah.
Yellowstone in 1883, which if you haven't seen 1883, worth it. Anyway, so, and the other thing about internet is when you're on the end of a street and you have a whole bunch of kids there that have those game boxes. You know, those games are like sometimes 100 gigs large. And so when those games sends an update, and all of a sudden you have like 5 houses of the 7 houses on a cul-de-sac downloading all that, using up all that bandwidth. That's what slows you down. And that's one of the things that Suddenlink was coming up against when everyone complained about Suddenlink speeds and things like that. It's because part of the trunks were having those large demands put on them by primarily, I think, gamers, and also the streaming. And that messed up everyone else around them. So one of the things that you can do with this money for broadband internet, and there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts about as far as, you know, what kind of strings come attached to it. But one of the things you need to think about if you're a voter is think about broadband internet today like we did the interstate highway system back in the 1950s. Okay. So I'm going to use Houston as an example because I grew up in Houston and I kind of understand how the highways were. But in 1949 Houston, you had I-59, or not I-50, you had US 59, US 75, I-10 coming in. So those are you think of those as your broadband internet big data pipes that were coming in. Okay. As more and more people started using those highways, as you get close, and downtown Houston became very crowded because they were all terminating right there in downtown Houston. That's kind of where we are right now in San Angelo. We have lots of, I think we have 7 backbones coming into town, but they're all pretty much terminating downtown. Okay. And I'm being very simple about it. So someone that knows the map will say, no, that's not right. Something terminates on, you know, Ben Ficklin Road or whatever, you know. Right. But what Houston did with this highway system was the first thing they did was they upgraded all those highways to interstates. So they added more lanes. All right. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. We're adding more fiber, we're adding more lanes, but we're still going downtown. And it's still getting clogged up. And as we add more lanes, that kind of reduces the congestion somewhat. Okay, applications, things that you do on the internet, like this gaming stuff. Right. People working from home, Zooming. That's a lot of upload. Upload is very stressful on internet infrastructure. So the next step we need to do the next step that, like if you think about the Houston highway system, they built Loop 610. Okay. So now instead of terminating your trip or starting your trip downtown, you could hop on Loop 610 and then intercept I-45 to go north to Dallas, for example. So that took a lot of load off of downtown. And then Loop 610 got crowded, so they built Beltway 8. Right. And then that got crowded. Then they went out to Mason Road or Peak Road out there to the west, and they built another loop around Houston. You can look at the same thing with San Antonio, where you had Loop 410, 1604. You get the idea. Yeah. So one of the things that San Angelo could look at, and this is just an idea, is somehow building a mid-range fiber loop around, outside the outskirts of the city, that people could actually, you can now tap into the high-speed internet, not by going downtown, but by going to that fiber loop. And then, I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm always thinking like, well, how do you make that sustainable? Maybe the county could charge money access to get on it. I don't know, make it a toll road. But there's all, the problem that I've seen over the years, and I've been in the internet business since 1995. I've seen government grants come in. They dump a bunch of money on it. It solves a problem for 2 years, and then it's like we forget about it, and it never did anything that's worthwhile or sustainable over a long period of time. I don't want that to happen to San Angelo because this is a lot of money that we can use to actually build something that's good for all the citizens. And also, one more thing this will do, this will help bring faster internet to some of the poorer part of towns. When you get out in rural areas, when you're on the north side of San Angelo, these are the next Albert Einstein could be living on 45th Street with crappy internet right now. Yeah, we can maybe get we have infrastructure available that his parents can cheaply get internet access to that home, and he might be able to learn something really cool. The other thing that this is going to do is we have a lot of people who work from home now. We have Google executives who live in San Angelo, work remotely, have Zoom meetings and all that kind of stuff right here from San Angelo, and they're making 6-figure incomes. So that's, this is an attractive community for someone like that, a young professional who has a job with a Fortune 100 company who can move here and work remotely if we had really good, sustainable internet. Lastly, I'll say this, Christoval, Dove Creek, Wall, Grape Creek, Water Valley, those areas, they're never going to be serviced correctly because the houses are too far apart, and it doesn't make business sense to connect them together with the internet. So what they're going to say is, well, we'll just throw up a wireless tower and get everyone on wireless internet. Wireless internet is good. I think it's a good stopgap, but I don't think it's the final thing. And the reason is, it's just like here. I upgraded this business here to fiber. Because I know the most important thing we do at San Angelo Live is we upload stuff. This live stream is uploading. This is a very stressful thing compared to downloading, okay? I want it to have clear, wide upload paths so we could live stream from this studio. And we're on Conterra, by the way, if anyone want to ask. This studio is on Conterra Networks. And that's why. I don't think there's any reason why we shouldn't set the table that eventually, within the next 10 years, 20 years, we could run a fiber link to every termination zone in the county, just like we do electricity.
Right.
Because broadband internet is as important today as electricity was back in 1930.
That really puts it into perspective,
Right.
And that's it's only going to get more competitive and more of an issue because of as long as the population keeps growing and businesses keep coming and with the interstates on the way eventually. We will take up what's going to happen for the rest of the campaign right after this. We'll take a commercial break now.
I'm Ron Perry. As a Vietnam-era veteran and a retired San Angelo firefighter, I've dedicated my life to service for my country and my community. As your next Justice of the Peace for Precinct 3, I will stand with my conservative values and life skills while listening to citizens with compassion to deliver justice without bias.
Fair, honest Republican. Vote Ron Perry for Tom Green County Justice of the Peace, Precinct 3.
We are back, and again, this is the final weekend of campaigning. Early voting starts Monday morning, either 7 or 8 o'clock, and there are some serious and significant changes that voters need to be aware of because of changes in state law. Governor Abbott insisted or put election integrity on the list of priorities, got that passed, and that's changed a lot for Vanna Hudson and her team down at the elections office. And one of the things is instead of one location for early voting, we're now going to have 5. And in addition to the Keys building downtown, there's going to be a voting location at the bus station downtown, also at Westlake Hardware on Knickerbocker Road, the Grape Creek Independent School District at 8207 North U.S. Highway 87, and MHMR services on Sherwood Way as well. So there are 5 early voting locations, and there's a whole different process for casting a ballot, so voters need to be aware of that. For candidates, it's the same old thing. Right now, you've got 2 days left to campaign before people start voting, and once they start voting, you can't get those votes back. I would imagine, I know that I've been through an election or two, I was nervous at this point in time. Where are you at this juncture?
Well, I talked to the other candidates too. I mean, and I'll hear what they have to say. One candidate told me, I'm just going to take 4 days off right now. I've had enough. I'll tell you the truth. When I start, once I can get in front of a voter, a group of voters, and talk to them and really listen to what they have to say, it energizes me. I actually kind of like this, and that's crazy because I like it. But you might think I'm crazy, but I'm not crazy. I'm very calm, very cool, very collected, and I enjoy talking to people about the issues because I know about the issues, and also I really like to listen to them. I also like to see where the citizens are on the issues. And I'll tell you that there's a couple things I've learned. I've had a lot of county employees reach out to me, and they talk to me about the bureaucracy and all the internal politics and stuff like that. And I just tell them, hey, I'm not going to get involved in internal politics in the county at all. as a candidate. Now, once I get in there, if there's something that needs to be addressed, I have to figure it out. But I was really serious when I talked to the HBA forum. I talked about how you need to earn your authority.
Right.
You can't just jump in there and say, I am the God of all things, worship me, all the voters voted for me. I'm going to be very, I don't know, you say it, humble. They know more than I do, and I need to figure out who's on my side and who's not. And I'm sure a lot of people will be on my side at the beginning. And then as things get hard, you'll see, how things play out, particularly with commissioners. I mean, I want to make sure we have really good relationships in the commissioner's court first. That's the most important thing. I think, would you agree with this, that the commissioners kind of hold the judge up?
The commissioners support the judge, and there are lively debates about issues, depending on who brings what issue up. But yeah, they have to work as a team. They have to. And the personality of the court will change because you're going to have a new county judge. And it's critical that those relationships work extremely well. You have to be able to give and take and understand that you're not going to win every fight, and you're not going to be right on every issue, and you have to do some team building sort of.
And I'm not going to go on. I don't need to go on a retreat, do I? I don't need to go on a retreat for team building. We're not going to do that, but.
There's a lot of training involved.
Yes, but the retreat with the commissioners. I don't want to do that. I just want to know. I just want them to know that my doors, if I'm elected, my door will be open. I'll listen to them. I may not agree with them. I might agree with them, and maybe we. And the other thing is, I think you have to be, as a leader, you have to be willing to make compromises and deals. And, you're going to have someone from another precinct that has a really pressing problem that may cost a lot of money or something like that. And we really have to look at that. And that commissioner is going to have to sell it. But we allow him to have that voice. Steve Floyd talked about several years, I guess maybe it was back in the 2000s, maybe it was in the 90s, where there was a kind of a divided commissioner's court. It wasn't fun. There's a lot of rancor on it. And I want to avoid that at all cost. I mean, we don't have any kind of that. But at the same time, I think we need to talk about serious issues and tackle some serious problems. Another thing I've learned talking to people is a lot of road problems out there.
There are, and the county is. When I was on the court, and 20 years before that, and 20 years before that, because Tom Green County is a rural county, roads are always going to be an issue. It seems like there's never enough money to take care of them all, and the more subdivisions we get, the more pressure there is to bring in more road mileage. And with inflation, the cost of keeping up roads and the cost of building roads just continues to skyrocket. That puts more pressure on the budget. But a former commissioner, a good friend of mine, Aubrey de Cordova, once told me that roads will not get you elected, but roads can get you unelected. So that was his words of wisdom as I was running for commissioner.
I took that advice too, and I don't want to make any promises on roads, but I've looked at a lot of problems with the roads, particularly in Precinct 4. And, some of those problems are, not caused by anything other than shortage of supplies, or, the weather's not consistently 65 degrees, so they can't fix a particular road that I've been told about. But those are things to monitor and make sure that that we get on them, because if we have, the biggest thing I don't want to have happen, there's two things. I don't want to have us build so many roads out there with these new subdivisions that are county roads and we can't afford to pay for them.
Yep.
I want to figure out how to pay for them. Now, I know there's the mud districts and things like that, and people say, run away from that. But maybe there's got to be some kind of funding mechanism for that, because you think about it, in the city makes money on a subdivision. They get the water, they get the Water Enterprise Fund, they get the sewer, they have the right-of-ways for the cable internet, they get the enterprise fees off of that. So in the county, we don't get that.
That's right. I'm glad you made that distinction. Special districts like a water control improvement district, a municipal utility district, even an emergency services district has some latitude in what they can provide, and there are different fee structures that go with those different subdivisions, or the different subdivisions of the state in those special districts that can have a bit more latitude than the county does, because what the county is restricted by statute and by law as far as revenue and roads go.
But you have people that live in very nice houses, and they're in a subdivision, maybe it's 20 years old or something like that, and those roads were never built to county specs. They're not county roads,
Right.
they're private roads, and they're going, why is our road falling apart? Why won't the county do something? I'm paying a lot in taxes,
Yeah.
and I'm not getting my money's worth. And I hear that cry,
Yeah.
and I think we need to figure out a way to avoid that in the future, especially right now. Well, we joked around, and remember cover one, we used to joke about Jim Ned. That's Tuscola. That's out in the county.
Right.
It's growing rapidly. And, of course, Jim Ned is going to be the powerhouse in football, not Wall, because of that. But so now Wall is going to build a lot of subdivisions. And those are all potential county roads that we're going to have to figure out a way to finance it. We need to find these sustainable revenue models to fix those problems. There's also one thing the chamber asked, what are you going to do about affordable housing in the county? Well, there's not. I think the chamber just wants us to go out and get grants for everything, But there are entrepreneurs in the HBA. Our home builders are great entrepreneurs, and they know how to go out there and get these things done. And I'd love to work with figuring out a better way for the county to be able to sustain a large road infrastructure. And I don't think it's going to be an easy problem to fix.
No, it won't be. And previous courts and previous judges have approached that issue and come up with some innovative solutions, and they tackle it every day.
Yeah.
Every commissioner every day tackles roads and the issues of not having enough money to fund them.
Right.
So that is going to be a daily issue for the commissioners' court, no matter who gets elected. We could talk all day about the issues, but I think we need to kind of wrap this up. Early voting starts Monday. February 14th, the election is March 1st, the primary election. In your particular race, there's a possibility of a runoff because there are 4 candidates if nobody gets over 50%. And then that runoff would be on May 24th, which means another couple of months of campaigning. And then the ultimate winner of that will go on to the November general election. And we have the possibility of an independent candidate at the November general election, and whoever wins the November general election will be sworn in as county judge on January 1st, 2023. So that's where we are now. We do encourage everyone to go out and vote. I believe there's one more forum, not for judge candidates, but the Pachyderm Club on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, the 16th, I believe, is having a candidate forum for county commissioners.
Are we going to televise it?
Candidate for Precinct 4. We haven't been asked to yet. And the court at law judge candidates. So those guys will be at the Pachyderm. They normally put on a pretty good program, and we encourage folks to go out there. This process, we are still accepting letters of endorsement for candidates, and we've had a lot of them and a lot of success there. Our coverage has been wall to wall on this election process. I'm proud of the team and what we've done and what we're going to continue to do. We're going to have a big program election night for election results, and it may be a long night because of the new rules and regulations. We'll see. I know that Vanna's got about the best team there is. They're trying to figure that out so they can get their job done, so we can get those election results as soon as possible. We will be visiting probably throughout the week with other candidates on other issues. So from San Angelo Live, from the news desk on this Friday afternoon, I'm Yantis Green.